Putin's dilemma, why he can't win and why he can't lose, the situation he put himself into when he decided to leave a mark in history. What's up, investors, it's the Russian dude, and let's talk about the lose-lose situation the president of Russia is facing right now. Each war is different, but what makes all of them the same is that they always have two sides. Each side thinks that they are the ones doing the right thing, and they will do everything possible to win and let the rest of the world see their side of the story. And as the saying goes, the history is written by victors. And that is exactly why only the good guys were winning wars in the past. And right now, Putin is trying to do just the same. And if he cannot prove the entire world the righteousness of his mission, he will do everything possible to show this at least to the people of Russia. And that's his dilemma. It is pretty obvious at this very moment that the war is not going in accordance with Russian estimations, and unless Putin does something radical, they're most likely going to lose. And that is why I only see three potential options for Putin, and to be honest, all three of them are equally bad. Option number 1, called the best case scenario for Ukraine. Russia just withdraws its troops and either directly or indirectly acknowledges its defeat. In this case, the world will no longer see Russia as a powerful country and Putin as a respectable leader. But what is even more importantly is that the people of Russia themselves, they will not understand why Putin gave up so easily. I mean, what about the narrative of Ukrainian Nazis? What about Ukrainians killing Ukrainians? What about protecting Russian ideals from the Western plague? All these questions will be left unanswered. And in addition to losing to the West, Putin will also lose the trust of his fellow citizens. And with no support all around, this will be the end of his political career. That is why this option is completely unacceptable for him. And yeah, before we talk about the option number 2, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you like hearing me occasionally mumbling like this. Okay, option number 2, which is continue this war as long as possible. And as a result of this, sooner or later, Russia will be completely separated from the rest of the world. At first, it might work, because regular Russians will have no access to the outside information and it will be just easier to control them. Everyone around is the enemy, Russia is the greatest country in the world, contain the spread of the misinformation. But in this modern world, it is getting harder and harder to limit people. That is why this option will only work temporarily. But in addition to that, continuing this war will require additional men and firepower, which eventually means the mass mobilization will have to be announced. And even though you see all these crazy Russian patriots saying, "I will die for Russia, just send me to Ukraine and I'll show how it's done," I'm telling you, the majority of them will do everything possible not to go to war. Which means that the mass mobilization will bring the confusion to the Russian society as well. People will start asking questions like this. Wasn't this supposed to be just a special military operation? Why do we need a mass mobilization? Are we going to actual war? And I mean, it's relatively easy to say different things behind the computer screen, but once you are really offered to sacrifice your life, this will be a major reality check for people like this. And that's probably one of the reasons why the mass mobilization have not been announced, or at least yet. And with continuous support of Ukraine from the West, slowdown and exhaustion of the Russian army, absence of genuine volunteers, and inability to do a mass mobilization, winning in this war for Putin is also not an option. But we do have an option number 3, which is most likely what's going to happen. And this is the victory of Ukraine in the eyes of the world, but victory of Russia in the eyes of Russia and its friends. And here's what it means. Among multiple goals of this special military operation, one of them was to stop Ukrainians from killing Ukrainians and to liberate Luhansk and Donetsk. Then this goal spread across the entire territory of Ukraine, which basically means that Russia bit off way more than it could chew. The war eventually slowed down, Russia reached its peak potential, and not that recently, Ukraine started to see seize the dominance. As a result of this, other invaded territories sooner or later will be most likely liberated, with only the east of Ukraine being under partial control of Russia. We even have this news from the last week, which says that Putin ordered the full liberation of Donetsk before September 15th, which potentially proves the following point. In one way or another, Russia will claim that they have won by liberating Donbass, and they will just quietly ignore all the other failures across Ukraine. The state propaganda will celebrate this liberation while focusing specifically on this region, or maybe even just a couple cities. They will show the close-up shots of happy local residents who will be thanking Russian soldiers for saving them. And this will only emphasize this victory of Russia. But the rest of the world will clearly see that Russia has not achieved any meaningful goals. The losses of the personnel, equipment, and the damages to the economy will be substantial. And these so-called achievements of Russia will most certainly not cover the costs of war. And I mean, that's exactly the thing. Russia will say they have won, but in reality they will not. Putin will present this as the victory of the entire nation. Most likely even annual celebrations and parades will be created. But just like with Stalin, generations later people will realize the true nature of these events. Stalin might have been a hero to the majority of Soviet people right after the war, but the great cost of 27 million lives has a very dark side to it. Thank you so much for watching. All the useful links can be found down below, and see you tomorrow.